12 p.m. Chief Bird, would you do the blessing?
Men ta då nästa. Och vi då kan vara nej. Och vi är ska ställa idag här står typ idag här. The most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to come and represent the business of the Cherokee Nation. I just thank you for the weather and the moisture that we received, and just bless the leadership of the tribe and let us take care of the business of the people today. Guide the leadership. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Chuck Husband Jr.
Here.
David Walkingstick. Bill Anglin. Jack Baker.
Here.
Joe Bird. Julia Coates. Here. Jody Fishinghawk. Here. Meredith Fraley. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Present. Don Garvin. Frankie Hargis.
Present.
Tina Glory Jordan. Present. Lee Keener. Dick Lay.
Here.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
David Thornton. Karen Cowan Watts. We do have a quorum.
Did you get?
Entertain a motion to approve the January 29, 2013 minutes.
Make motion to be approved.
Ms. Baker,
Second.
Second by Councilor Hardis. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Just a preliminary matter, our Rules Committee agenda is long as it seems to be long lately. So I'd ask the folks that are giving reports if you could perhaps limit your oral report to highlights that you really need to bring to our attention, and then, of course, answering questions from the council. That'll probably save us time on the back because we have been running over. This might be one way we can save some time. So with that, I'd ask Marshall Buell to come forward. Set a good example for us.
There you go. Good afternoon. Is there any questions on the report that I submitted this month?
Well, that was good. Councilor Ken Watts.
Thank you. He provided an additional report that I'd asked for last month concerning the Claremore Indian Hospital, and I had some questions on that. And so, how did it work with the City of Claremore's involvement in these 3 incidents you've outlined?
Okay, in the car theft, the City of Claremore PD also responded as well. But we were the actual one that did the NCIC BOLO. And then what happens is our investigators or themselves will submit all that to the FBI for prosecution in federal court, like the stolen vehicle. That's where that goes. Once that gets turned over to the FBI, then it's in their hands, the Northern District of USA. The stolen person harassment, it was just us that went out there.
So, is the policy for the Indian Hospital to call directly to you guys, or do they call to the City of Claremore?
If it's an emergency, they can call 911, and that gets the city there now. One of the things that happens is sometimes we don't have a marshal anywhere close. So we always tell the hospital to dial 911 first if it's an emergency. If it's a harassment information or something like that, they can call us. But usually we want them to call 911 first, and then the next phone call needs to be to us so we can at least get somebody headed that way. It's always good to call both, but always 911 first. So that's going to get the city of Claremore there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further questions for the Marshal? Thank you, Marshal. Office of the Attorney General, Mr. Embry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As always, it is an honor to address the committee. One thing that I will be passing out, if you take one, pass it on, that is the legislative update from our state lobbyist, which is the Kilpatrick Free Group. By the end of your meetings today, you will have the monthly update from Cornerstone, which is a federal lobbyist. They are putting the final touches on that as we speak. Where do I begin? Okay, well first, some very good news. Today, by a vote of 286 to 138, the House of Representatives passed the Senate version of the Violence Against Women Act, which puts in place protections for Native American women, expands our jurisdiction of our tribal courts, and most importantly puts our jurisdiction over non-tribal members who commit acts of violence against our women. that the House of Representatives should be commended for this, especially Representative Tom Cole, who helped spearhead the Senate version of this that kept the tribal sovereignty aspects in it. It will be on President Obama's desk by the end of the week, and that is a long time coming, and we should express our gratitude.
Mr. Attorney General, and we're going to have further discussion on Violence Against Women Act at the tail end of our agenda, but I just want to point out to the committee, we have the roll call vote from this morning's vote. Every member of the congressional delegation except Congressman Cole voted against the Violence Against Women Act with the tribal provisions. And when it passed the Senate, both of our senators voted against it. We shouldn't forget it, and we're not going to forget it. So, thank you.
Point well taken, Mr. Chairman. The update as to litigation in the Freedman Northern District, we are waiting on a ruling on a motion to stay that has been made by the Freedman descendants and to transfer up to the D.C. District Court. We are waiting on that ruling. We're still confident that we responded to that very well, and we think that the case will go forward as planned. As to the Freedman case or the ban case in the up in Washington D.C., we have filed our motion for rehearing en banc. The United States and the Freedmen has asked for additional time to file to our motion. That was granted, and today, the 28th, is their deadline for to the reply. So when that is filed, like all other documents, we will be forwarded to the tribal council so that you will have access to them. Also, as a segue, these documents will be placed beginning next week on our new website, which will be up and running next week. Or so I've been told, because I'm not familiar with such ways of the world. But we are looking forward to that being a great conduit of information between the other branches of government and the Cherokee people as to our actions. As to the United Katuah ban, we have been going over painstakingly over 5,000 pages of record, of the administrative record that the United States government has submitted. My hats are off to our paralegal staff wading through that many documents, trying to get them in order to be workable. I'm not saying that the United States jumbles these things up on purpose, but it would help that they put pages in numerical order as they would submit the record. That being said, we have requested an amendment to supplement the record, and we have filed that in a motion, and their response, the United States response, is due tomorrow on that. When we get that, we will make sure it's available to the council. And then as the same report as I had last month on the 76-acre tract, we are awaiting decision from the IDIA. I'll go ahead and discuss codification. Codification there's nothing new to report. They are mailing us back certain sections. When we get those sections back, we're going to go through a double blind system to make checking to make sure that it's all accurate before it goes off publication. So that is an ongoing process. Other major cases, April 16th, I don't know if I gave you the exact date, but now we do have an exact date. April 16th will be the oral argument on the adoptive parents case, or the baby Veronica case that was known in the media. Our staff has been working extremely hard on this case. A member of our staff, Christy Nemo, will be doing the oral argument for the behalf of the Cherokee Nation. I believe that is a very big milestone that a Cherokee citizen, a woman Cherokee citizen, will be arguing for the Supreme Court on a case that is going to have major repercussions on a national level for all of Indian country. She looks forward to that opportunity. We have the utmost faith in her. We have some of the brightest minds in Washington, D.C., Sinofsky Chambers, Lloyd Miller to help us shepherd us through that because it's not an easy task. It is an all-consuming task, and we look forward to oral argument on the 16th. As to tobacco compact, we are beginning to have meetings. I cannot go into detail, but we're beginning to have meetings with other tribal governments to present a united front in the negotiations with the state of Oklahoma on the upcoming expiration of those tobacco compacts. Tag or motor vehicle tag compact is extremely close to being complete, and I know that this council and all of its Cherokee Nation and the entire state of Oklahoma, where Cherokee citizens live, will be happy with its result. And as the final thing on my report will be, as you all very well may know, that the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court yesterday issued a ruling in the redistricting lawsuits that declares Legislative Act 2612 constitutional. That paves the way for the elections to go forward in a timely fashion. It was a very well-reasoned and thought-out opinion, and that puts that matter to rest. With that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Councilor Count Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't seen a report on the fake tribes.
Okay.
We've discussed it before in the committee. Is it something you can catch us up to date on, maybe in writing, and then maybe in a couple of weeks, and then in going forward, update us on your monthly report?
I will. We can assign an attorney to that. Mr. Morton, who did we assign? Ms. Hill. Ms. Hill is going to be our person in charge of that, and I will make sure that she will give a written report as to those on a monthly basis of the activity that we have with the various groups and organizations that hold themselves out as tribes.
So we continued to get a lot of information maybe about new tribes, and before we had maintained a list online. Do we just send that all to Sarah now, or how do we, what would be the expectations of the past, of today versus the past? If we maintain a list, we wrote letters, is Sarah the whole point of contact for that?
Sarah will be the central point of contact for any such organizations as to, what we will do in the efforts to educate citizens and especially governments as to these organizations, that will be developed through our office, and, obviously with major input with Ms. Hill, but she is going to be the person leading that.
But maybe before the next month's meeting, there was never really a handoff from the old task force. If we could gather up some whoever's left and kind of update you and get it clear before, so it doesn't take up time in this committee as much.
That would be fine.
That be acceptable? Can you just email us? Okay. Then could you explain, there's been a lot of questions around the FOIA process for the public. Could you explain to me how that's supposed to work? Are you still the point of contact? So they're supposed to email you at your email.
This is the way it works. Okay. The council gave a directive that you could go directly to a director or an executive director to ask your question.
My apologies for interrupting, but isn't that the GRA process and not the public?
It was my understanding that was FOIA and GRA.
I stand corrected. The GRA and not the public FOIA process.
That's right.
It's just a GRA?
It's just a GRA.
So,
well, as a FOIA, be it, whether it's GRA or FOIA, it's all going to come to my office for dissemination. So any citizen, talk to the internet here, any citizen that has a question that has a FOIA request needs to contact Todd-Hembry@Cherokee.org and submit their question for requested documents. And that goes for any citizen, government official, or elected officials.
Okay, and on the GRA process, I had sent a request for information involving an employee or contractor to Ms. Registrar O'Leary on the 21st. And I think, is it 6 we have?
You have 6 days, and then you could request an additional 10. For
No requests,
Okay.
no response.
And that is on my desk, and I've been, looking at, involved in other court battles. But as to an individual dealing with contracts, me and my staff are researching as to what would be able to be, produced to you in a confidential matter. Obviously, you're going to get it, but we need to know what we're going to mark confidential. Under the Governmental Records Act, you're entitled to just about anything, but we have to determine what is going to be confidential or not.
Because I think in the past, we've all been provided those and they have not been confidential. I know there are several contracts that were.
Yeah, but we're talking about a request on a particular individual who's really just a worker. Now, there, other contracts such as attorney contracts, et cetera, we have made a policy decision that, those are fair game. But when you're getting to, whether a person who's just doing a job here, what we're going to, make unconfidential disclosures to, we got to be very careful about, and we're going through that process.
When we get to, because I think we both are on the same page of this one particular individual, even though they're going to be more impacted, they're posting stuff online, which speaks to their job. In that they were tasked with outing fakes in the tribe and such, and that's problematic. So I think we need to have a bigger discussion then
I think we need
about
to have,
maybe that individual
and I would be happy to talk with you about that individual,
okay, we'll
confidentiality in
okay.
closed doors, but I'm not going to do it
The
right
other
here.
thing that I had requested details on the land purchase and that, like the contracts, the purchase price, conflict of interest disclosures. I've gotten some information, but I've not gotten all information.
What do you have?
Contracts, purchase, contracts, and conflict of interest disclosures.
I know we have made those requests for information. It was my understanding that you got that information. I apologize if I stand
I got
corrected.
the legal description, the dates, and the overall price with no details.
Okay, and you're looking for the specific written contract itself?
My email on February 18th, which I believe was a follow-up after some last meeting before that, which was probably council meetings or such. So it's even further back. It includes contracts, actual contracts, and conflict of interest disclosures. And then I have, is Tom here because we're talking about water plant something, or?
I have Sarah here and Tom here.
So I'm concerned about the Oklahoma and Arkansas agreement, which I didn't
We are too.
hear you address in your report. So,
I will be happy to address that. The Arkansas Attorney General and Oklahoma Attorney General, and Sarah, you might as well come on up here and help me with this, reached an agreement to reopen studies of the Illinois River watershed. The Cherokee Nation was not involved, not invited, and this was done without our knowledge. I intend to meet with Attorney General Scott Pruitt and to inform him and educate him about our significant interest in the watershed that has been ruled on by Judge Purcell. And it was disheartening that the state of Oklahoma did not invite us and may have taken measures to make sure we didn't know about this. But we have a copy of the agreement if you'd like, and we are going to express not only our desire, but how incumbent and necessary it is that the Cherokee Nation be involved in the process of this additional study, and any other information about this I'll hand over to Ms. Hill.
So there has not been a letter from either Chief Baker or your office, because I would use stronger language. I mean, it's a violation of our sovereignty. They're exerting rights over our water quality and water that they don't necessarily have without us being party.
And there was a letter sent to the Arkansas AG and the Oklahoma AG expressing concern that we have about the decisions that were made in the absence of the Cherokee Nation. And I spoke with the Attorney General's office in Oklahoma. I didn't speak with Scott Pruitt, but I spoke with Clayton Eubanks and expressed again to him personally my concern about what had happened. And I also want to have an opportunity to sit down and hear what they have to say for themselves to some extent. Why was this decision made the way it was? Because I know you were on the technical advisory group, and they were well aware that Cherokee Nation has an interest in this watershed and in this standard. So there are a lot of questions that we would like to have answers to, and we intend to get those answers.
Okay. Thank you very much. And are we going to respond on this cave wildlife refuge seeks public input? Because are we getting those things? Are we working? Are you pushing those things so that the Cherokee Nation?
That's specifically, we're more interested in this right now. But certainly.
Those are all,
They're interrelated.
they're exactly interrelated. So I know that there's a lot on Sarah's plate and there's a lot on Todd's plate, but I think those letters would come from either you guys or the AG's office or the Environmental Protection Commission, right, or Chief's office?
Well, as to, as to communication between the AG's office, yeah, we have done that now. As to what input we have, to be honest, that's outside my wheelhouse. That's not within, in my sphere of influence.
I know that the wildlife, cave wildlife does not seem necessarily relevant on face value, but in exerting our treatment in the same manner as the state and all those other things, and I think, Sarah, you understand that. But Tom, if we're not pushing those things out to the AG's office so that there's a formal response for our government, we're not exerting our sovereignty, and that it builds our entire case for what we do.
Well, and certainly if there's something that you come across that you have a concern about, you call me, and I will investigate and find out if there's a response that we can possibly put out. I will work with Todd, and we will get that done.
And you guys are always great about responding, and I think I've included you when I capture those things. But Tom, I'm not paid to do that work, so Tom's office needs to be doing that on a routine basis. As part of our beyond just scenic river standard, there's so much more to it. And I know you guys are doing your job, but there's more stuff. And I'm concerned about the Environmental Protection Commission and the Environmental Services Group, how they are or are not interacting with you guys to enforce that on a daily basis. Because it's not just when we show up at court with a bunch of research we did. That's where I'm a little bit frustrated, because I haven't been hearing that part. Maybe that's what we're going to hear at the water conference.
We have the agenda, it's more or less finalized, and I will get that to you. And like I said, there's specific, it helps me to have specific examples, and I don't mind to sit down and talk about those issues and concerns with you anytime. If there are things that we're not being responsive to, or if you think there are different ways we can do things, I want to hear about that.
I guess, do we have is there a formal agreement? How does that work between Tom's group and the EPC and you guys on our ongoing environmental issues, not just water, but air?
Well, I'm over at their office 2 days a week. I'm over at the Environmental Programs office working with them, and I talk to Tom, and I talk to Pat Gwynn, and everyone else who's involved in that universe certainly on a weekly basis, and more often than not, it's multiple times a week. So we work very closely together on all of these issues. It doesn't mean we don't miss things. I'm certain that we do, but we are making a concerted effort, and I've been directed, and they've been directed to do our best job to coordinate those things between our offices.
Mr. Attorney General, do you think that the counselor and Ms. Hill could continue this dialogue offline? It's a very important issue. We just want to make sure we can efficiently get through the reports.
There's one really quick thing. Do you know what the
Certainly,
Illinois
Counselor.
River Watershed Partnership is?
I do.
Okay, and I
That's
think.
why I have her.
Yes, no, you were very fortunate, Mr. Embry. And I think in the letter, are we asking for the transparency involved with the appointments and technical and stuff? Are we being specific on our involvement that we're demanding? requesting?
I don't see the Illinois River Watershed Partnership is, you're talking about the standard, the new agreement?
Yes, because we're in trouble if they falsify a report and buy it over on the Arkansas side, which is what I'm getting indications of, in order to lessen the standard.
Well, and that's part of the discussion that we intend to have with Arkansas and Oklahoma, about having Cherokee Nations, having our own experts are involved in the process of how this study is completed, so we have some oversight in how it's done, so that no one is trying to fix the study in any way at all. So
And that'll be put in writing to the state, and both states?
I think it's, I don't know I don't know what the conclusion of this, because we haven't even started the discussions with them on these issues yet. We haven't had a chance to sit down and talk to them, so I can't say specifically how that's going to come about at this point, I think.
Commissioner Kay Wildlife.
Anything further for the Attorney General?
Not for the AG at this time, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Engler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Todd, I failed to hear you respond in your oral report. Did you get the numbers on the promises made, promises kept per county?
Per county, I know we've got some, they are, this would have been disseminated also. And I'll make a copy for dissemination. Well, it's not broken down by county. It is just the cost of promises made, promises kept, and this is from Cherokee Nation businesses, and it's the best that we can do without creating, the information that can be disseminated to me. This is the best I can. I'll make a copy of this right now for all.
Okay, I have one more question too, and I didn't hear this in your report either. Also, who pays for the reception of the chief and the...
There was a $150 charge that Cornerstone usually does for an event at their place, and that cost was waived. So no one paid for a hall there. Now, as to their, I wasn't in attendance. I don't know what kind of snacks they had or whatever, but as to the event at Cornerstone did not receive any money to host that event.
Cherokee Nation pays nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Engler. And my apologies to Councilor Garvin. I skipped him. Councilor Garvin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the tribal issue concerning citizens living outside the Cherokee County area and lives in the state, on the tags, some of them are kind of sitting on pin and needles waiting, to buy a tag. What's the major hang-up? I thought last month they were getting real close.
Oh, the major hang-up's money. How much the state wants and how much we're willing to give. We have agreed in principle to sell the tags throughout the state of Oklahoma to every Cherokee citizen. That's going to be a great milestone and a great exercise of our sovereignty. Now, they're wanting more, and we want to give them less than what they want. So
They're
that's what
they're wanting more from schools, right?
they're wanting more for everything. They're kind of greedy. So, I mean, it is, we know where we're going to end up. It's just how much does the state want for that and how much we're willing to give. Because we got a real good thing going. And we do not want to diminish one iota the process in the 14 county areas. That is off the table. That's the Alabama. That's not going to be tinkered with. Now we're going to sell throughout the state of Oklahoma. Because and the state of Oklahoma has a legitimate interest. They have their tag agencies and their county commissioners saying, well, my golly, we're going to lose out on money. So they're trying to protect them to the greatest extent possible, and well, they should. And our job is to make sure that the Cherokee citizens are benefited to the greatest extent possible. We're close. We're not there yet.
So our message to our people would be,
That's right.
it may take a while.
It will be done before the end of the legislative session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Walkingston?
Hey Todd, I just want to, thank the registration department and the realty department for working on the Cobell case. They've been working long hours. I know registration was there until midnight last night, processing all the forms. So just to making this available, not guaranteed they're going to get anything out of it. They're putting time in to serve our citizens. So if you lay that message from the council, that we really appreciate them.
That point needs to be echoed long and hard. I mean, you should see the Cherokee citizens that are lining the halls, and the dedication of our realty department and the registration department that is doing more than yeoman's work. Like I said, they're staying well into the evening, well into the night to make sure that these claims are processed to the greatest extent of our capability. I can't say enough for them, and I know they're proud, and I know I think every counselor and every Cherokee citizen ought to give them a pat on the back and a handshake, because they're doing. You should see the people over there. It is utterly amazing.
Thank you, Councilor Walkstick. Councilor, anything further, Councilor
That's it,
Walkstick?
thank you.
Councilor Coates, we see you. You're recognized.
She on mute?
Councilor Coates?
I think she got knocked off.
Yes, sorry, I didn't realize it was my turn. I just put your thing on phonic. Thank you. I'm having an extremely difficult time with the audio here, so I apologize if my question has already been asked and responded to. Councilor Garvin asked me 3 questions about the negotiations with the state over the hard tags outside of our jurisdiction. And I was wondering if the Attorney General could give any indications. I realize there's a negotiation going on, but if there are any indications of the nature of of what I presume some kind of revenue sharing with the state that is taking place. I know within boundaries, moving to school districts, is it going to be something along those lines, or
Councilor, what I understand your question to be is, what's the nature of the revenue sharing proposals that the Attorney General is hearing from the state? And Mr. Attorney General, you're in the middle of negotiations, which I know is sensitive, so I don't have to tell you to be careful.
Well, yeah, no doubt. I live carefully. Most people, public people, don't believe that. No, there are. It is revenue sharing, Councilor Coates. I will tell you that it runs the gamut as to everything between, you know, a bigger take of roads, a bigger take of education, a bigger take, additional monies that they have wanted for us to contribute to the Oklahoma Highway Patrolmen's Fund, things that we haven't done in the past. Obviously, the state of Oklahoma is revenue, they're strapped, and they're looking, to gain as much new revenue streams as possible, and our job is to keep it the same. Without getting into extreme details, I will tell you that it is a broad spectrum of what they're asking for, and mindful that the package that will be brought forth will obviously be beneficial to the Cherokee people and beneficial to the state of Oklahoma. Maybe not as beneficial as they would want, but it will be beneficial to the state of Oklahoma. Follow up?
Yes, Councilor.
So would it be fair to say that what the state is asking for doesn't really have much, if any, benefit to the Cherokee Nation and its citizens in the way that the compact is negotiated for within boundaries, where what we give to school districts is in proportion to the number of Cherokee students in those districts? There isn't necessarily, it sounds like, any any negotiation of that sort that, has something specific to our interest necessarily, that we're simply going to be supporting with the state sees of this interest, or at least that's what the state for. We've agreed to anything, but that's sort of what's being requested. Would that be fair to say?
Well, as I'll restate, is that nothing will change within the 14 county areas as to the amount of tag, price of the tag, the price of excess tags, or the distribution to the schools and police forces and roads and bridges. Obviously, the state of Oklahoma is wanting to look out for the best interest of their citizens in the counties outside the Cherokee Nation. Our interest is to make sure that the interests of the Cherokee citizens are most are looked after also. So it's a if I understand your question, we are not acquiescing to anything that, or we're just supporting what the state of Oklahoma does. Far from it. If so, we'd already have a deal cut. What we're doing is making sure that when we sell a tag, let's say in Oklahoma County, that that we're able to collect that revenue and that we're able to make those distributions to the to the schools there as we see under our laws and an exercise of our sovereignty. Those are the details that are being worked out, and without getting way too much into the tall grass, that's the best I could answer it at this point.
Anything further, Counselor?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. All right. Election Commission. I think I saw Mr. Chafin earlier. There he is.
Chairman, members of the council, Mary Chafin, Election Commission attorney, and the chairman's unable to be here today. We have commission members Martha and Carolyn here. If there are any questions concerning the report, I think you all have. The commission has asked me to address a question to the council. We've had some questions arise with regard to boundary line between District 9 and 10, whether or not that boundary line is old Highway 20 or new Highway 20, to the extent there might be any difference. I don't know what extent there is, but that question has arisen, and the council has asked me to request of this committee to clarify that for us if they can.
Councilor Calhoun.
I'm sorry, would you repeat what you just asked about?
The boundary line between District 9 and 10. The question has arisen as to whether or not that is old Highway 20 or new Highway 20. To the extent there may be a difference between old and new.
This is exactly why we were in court, because if there's not enough on the legislative record for you to even decide that, then we didn't pass a proper map in the first place.
And questions arisen, and we're asking the council to clarify so there's not issues in the future.
To me, I appreciate that you are coming here trying to do your job, but this speaks to the whole point of that lawsuit, which was never answered in that Supreme Court decision on anyone on face value could not take up that map in the legislative record and determine this or probably several other questions. So candidates file next week, and here as a body, without it being on the agenda, we're asked to take up a major issue that would reflect on this legislation that's already been passed. I mean, I'm not the lawyer in the room, but this presents a big quandary to me. Why this, I guess this is why the Supreme Court just didn't answer this question.
Ms. Barker Harold, you have risen.
this particular issue does not affect the legislation. The legislation was real constitutional. Part of the process and the duties of the Election Commission is to make sure that they have voters within their boundaries. The geodata, their geodata people and that sort of thing, the different things that they're using to establish those, they establish these boundaries. And that is the purpose of having a geodata group once it's done. And so now this does, what action you take today is not like a resolution or a law or anything. It is just confirmation to the Election Commission that these are the boundaries. And they're asking that because the election is coming up. It has nothing to do with the legislation that was passed. It's not altering the legislation. And Mr. Henry probably has
So may I continue? So Mr. Justice is here, so if he created that map, which was passed out of, and we're gonna have to assume that he, as a representative of the executive branch, is telling us the truth.
Well, I can't answer that was uncalled for. You can assume that everybody who gets in front of this podium is going to tell the truth.
You didn't report, you lied about where I live. Really?
No, are you really kidding me?
Councilor Cowan wants to suspend.
That is unbelievable, and I'm going to ask for an apology from the
You need to
councilor.
start apologizing to me from the last meetings when you stood.
Oh, man.
The councilor will suspend. Mr. Attorney General, this committee believes any representative of the executive branch comes to us in good faith, in honesty. If we have evidence otherwise, there's ways to demonstrate that. An outburst in council calling the Attorney General a liar is not the proper process. It doesn't reflect good on the committee. It doesn't reflect good on the council. The councilor can issue a press release and I suppose call the Attorney General anything she wants, but in this room, we're not going to call the Attorney General of the Cherokee Nation a liar. And if we think that any cabinet officer, any member of the executive branch is being dishonest, we'll follow a process to demonstrate that.
Thank you,
Mr. Attorney General. Anything further
So I had a question,
responsive
Mr.
to?
Justice, about whether or not you
And
can
I've asked you to
clarify.
suspend for a moment. Mr. Attorney General, anything further in follow-up to Ms. Barker Harold?
No, the only thing that I would add is that, there was my understanding of the intent of the tribal council and the committee was that this was Old Highway 20. The map itself, or the description of the map did not delineate whether it's old or new. The Election Commission has a question, is it old or new? So therefore, they come in good faith and in all honesty to ask this committee for clarification. It is well within your rights to do so at this time.
Councilor Fishinghawk, did you have a question for the Attorney General?
Yes, the Attorney General. I don't think it's up for question. I'm looking at this map right now, and if you would get a copy of it, it says Old Highway 20.
Well, yeah, that is what, we're asking, or the Election Commission is asking for clarification.
It says Old Highway 20 on the map. That's what it is, I take it.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, I think we just need a point of clarification. It seems plain on the information that we've been given out. I move to clarify that District 10 southern boundary in Delaware County reflects Old Highway 10. I think it was also, Old Highway 20, I'm sorry, and I think it was also known at one time as Lindsay Street. I put that in the form of a motion just for clarification to give them information so they can move ahead with the election.
Point of order.
Second by Councilor Fishinghawk. Again, this is not an action to amend legislation. It's not an action to take a resolution. Is that correct, Madam Speaker?
That is correct. It's just to give them a clarification. They have requested it. We'll give them clarification through committee today.
Very good. We have a motion on the floor. Mr. Engler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be clear on this whole deal because this is what we just came out of court with. And I can't believe we could change this. I mean, if it's like it, if it's like it is, but I need to have the proof that that's exactly what you all passed out of, through the council, full council, that this map matches exactly what that map said. If you go changing this stuff, then this whole thing is really muddied up.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Attorney General.
which is the whole point for the clarification. There is a question. We believe that it was a scrivener's error. To make all minds clear and to make sure that there is no question, that is why the Election Commission is asking for that clarification. If it is not the intent of the body, well, then you vote, no, it wasn't. If it is the intent of the body, well, you vote, yes, it was. That's why they were asking that out of an abundance of caution and to prevent litigation is why they're here to do that. It is an economic use of Cherokee people's time and money to get this point clarified now instead of at a court of law until we go up and get this, hours and hours of litigation costs. You can solve that and answer that question right here and now.
Mr. Chafin, is it a fair statement that the Election Commission scrutinized the map and through all that scrutiny, the one part of the map that there is uncertainty about is this old Highway 20 versus new Highway 20? Is that a fair statement?
I think that's fair, it is.
So the body needs to proceed with clarifying this one way or the other. The information in front of us, as Councilor Fishing pointed out, is old Highway 20. Ms. Parker-Hill.
And Mr. Chair, just as part of the speaker's motion, this needs to be clarified. This does not change Legislative Act 2612.
That's true. The minutes will most assuredly reflect that, Ms. Parker-Hill. Mr. Keener.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I've asked Chapin, at what point did we find this, maybe I'll call it discrepancy, for lack of a better term? At what point did we find that? What timeline?
This came to my attention this week.
This week. Was there at any point where a person came in thinking they were in the district and maybe not, that was going to run for elected office?
I'm not sure about that. One of the commissioners had asked me, or the commissioners had asked me, what the intent was, and the description says Highway 20, and so for the old Highway 20 or new Highway 20, I picked it up.
So you don't know the reason why the commissioner would suddenly come to you after it's been approved?
The commissioner here, you can ask him that question.
Okay.
On there.
Yeah. If I could ask Martha.
If I may speak to that.
Yes, Ms. Commissioner.
The office administration have been very busy trying to field calls and make sure that people are placed appropriately according to the new voter registration software and the guidelines that were used for that placement. There have been inquiries on specific people calling in wanting to know if they were in a certain district because they thought they were in another district. So this has arisen from that, and it was particularly in regard to filing, and so we just want a clarification. It was never our intent, it is not ever our intent to change any maps. We did not create any maps. It is our duty to carry out the obligations that you all have given us, and we are just asking for clarification because it has arisen out of the fact that people have come in wanting to file in a certain district, and when we have looked to see where they are placed according to the geodata that OU did for us, they were in a different place. So that's where this has actually arisen from. So it came from the office administration asking us to get clarification on this. It was never our intent. I want you all to understand, we have not made any maps. We do not plan to make any maps, and our duty is to fulfill the obligation that has been set forth for us.
Did you say the Office of the Administration asked you to look at that?
The election office administrator.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then it was in some
It
way
was
trying to
within,
file.
yes, exactly.
Need to
Yes,
adjust
yes,
or make sure that they
exactly.
knew where they live.
Yes,
Right.
yes. And there have been different issues that have come up like that. And so we have been trying to go the extra mile to make sure they are correctly placed where they should be. So that's where this came from. And like I said, we have not changed any maps. We do not plan to change any maps. You know, we will follow what comes out of legislation. And so that is what was brought to our attention from the office workers. And so that was what we were wanting clarification on. So.
Anything further, Mr. King?
Yes, sir. A while back, this may be for Mr. Justice, really. A while back, we looked at a map of one of Councilor Garvin's constituents, and we were able to look at satellite views greatly enhanced with the line coming down to the middle of the property. Did we not do that with this area too, or do we need to do that? Was that, I don't remember the original map in that detail. It was old 20 or current 20. I don't know if you remember either, Mr. Justice.
I'm not sure I understand the question. What?
Well, since you did the detailed analysis, what was was it old 20 where you drew the line? Do you remember?
We had used Highway 20. When we created the map, we used Highway 20, and Highway 20 through J is Main Street. It was brought to my attention that it was supposed to have been old Highway 20. So we made that correction and showed it along the old Highway 20, which is, I guess, Lindsay Street. Is that right?
Okay, so I guess I don't understand how was it brought to your attention it was supposed to be old 20? Why would, I don't understand why someone would make that call other than you.
I received a phone call asking for clarification on it, and I didn't know. So I was told it was supposed to have been old Highway 20, so.
I'm really at a loss.
If I might add, we were trying to look at every area that we could to make sure that we were doing this correctly. We had asked our office administrator to contact David's office to see, for clarification there and to see where they were getting where this particular person was placed. We called the OU Center for Spatial Analysis. We asked them to pinpoint it, to look at it, and then we called the person who installed the voter software. So we contacted as many places as we could to make sure that we were doing the right thing since the question had come up from somebody wanting to file. So from our office, we had actually asked David that question because we wanted to look at that aspect plus what we had gotten from the OU people. So that came from us making a contact with him just as another means of trying to see what we were all getting to make sure we were coming up with the same thing. So
that will change the deviation numbers, correct?
Very slightly. We looked at the total area with the number of people in it. It was 14.
But still, if it's just one person, that's not what was approved and voted on. Well, I don't see how we can change it from the original 20.
Well, again, like I said, we are not changing anything.
No, I know.
Okay.
Council can.
Okay. We just wanted clarification that there really wasn't any need to change anything, that we, what you all put out as a council is what we are still abiding by, so that there was never any question that we are doing anything incorrectly other than following the maps that came out of this body.
Because what I'm hearing, it sounds like that someone didn't like where they were and called somebody, and somebody called somebody and said, move it, that we didn't mean to do that, we meant to do this. That's what it sounds like.
I don't know what happened, I'm just saying, where it originated from, so.
I know you didn't do that part for the voting question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David, and I still have a question for you, but I want to ask him first. So back to my original question, the map that we passed in council, did it use old Highway 20 or new Highway 20? And I heard you say new.
Yes, it was a new Highway 20.
So what was passed on legislative record and signed by the chief used new Highway 20? There is nothing else but new Highway 20 that can be used, and if there is a vote today to change that, I would like to say again a point of order that it would have to be to amend the agenda today to even consider that then, if it was to use old Highway 20. And I would like the background geodata that supports that will show that on that map. If we could get a copy of that by email, maybe by close of business tomorrow, I would greatly appreciate it. And I still have a question for the good commissioner.
Certainly, Councilman.
Was there a council person maybe seated on this body that came through and asked about a particular candidate that this would affect?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. You did a great job presenting. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Ms. Barker Harold, are we changing a map with this
You're not
action?
changing the map, and I want to clarify what Mr. Justice said. The map, Highway 20 was not voted on this map. I think what you meant, David, was that when we had discussions with the council and looking at the different descriptions, you thought it was a new Highway 20, and there was a discussion by the council, and I think Mr. Snell, I think, had the conversation with either this group or someone else. He wanted Old Highway 20. I think it was just a miscommunication. This is absolutely a Scrivener's error in the description. There is nothing in Legislative Act 2612, and believe me, I have looked inside and out lately about that. There's nothing in 2612 that designates Highway 20. It's just a map. The descriptions come from our geodata afterwards with instructions and looking at what they're supposed to do so that the council or the election commission has that. But your vote is not to change a piece of legislation because legislation doesn't do that.
I'll be right back.
Council Watson.
I was going to call for the question.
Of course, but one moment. Council Fraley.
Was the map that was approved in committee by council, was that considered attached here to and made a part hereof of the election law?
These maps?
Whatever map that was, we approved.
The map that you approved.
Was it made attached thereto and made part of that legislation?
This map? Yes.
No.
Not this map.
No,
But the 15 district
the
map.
map.
Yes, it was a part of the legislation.
Okay, so if we vote on, Todd, I'll direct the question to Todd.
Certainly, Council.
So if we vote today to include something, are we not changing the legislation since it was attached and made a part of the legislation?
This is what a vote of clarification would be, okay? You passed a map that set the southern boundary of District 10 at Highway 20, okay? Now, there has been a question that has arose between the Election Commission and other individuals that says, okay, what Highway 20 were you referring to? There was debate in the during this process is that you're using Old Highway 20. There's two Highway 20, there's old and new. That's the essence of this clarification. Which, if you met one way or the other, tell the Election Commission so they can go through the filing period, with some confidence. There obviously will be challenges. I predict that there will be challenges all the way through this election process. That's going to happen. But the Election Commission has should have the right to get a pure clarification from this body. When the map that said Highway 20 meant old or new, let them know. Let them know now before they have to go through a bunch of litigation. It is what it is. If you all meant old, say old. If you meant new, say new. That's what the clarification is. It's not changing any intent of the map. We're talking about what I've been told, 14 people. It's not going to change the percentage of deviation. If they want to, if certain individuals want to go back to court, jump on in, the water's fine. But the Election Commission deserves the right to have a clarification one way or the other. Did you mean yes or no, old or new? Tell them, and then whatever litigious people come from on that issue, let them come.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Mr. Snell.
My comment was way back when we first talked about that old Highway 20 was always on borderline, and that was my comment then, and I think it still is. Well, Highway 20, where's the border line?
Well, Counselor, we will now proceed to a clarification on this issue based on Counselor Fishinghawk's motion reaffirming that Highway 20, old Highway 20 is what we intended, and it was the Speaker's motion seconded by Counselor Fishinghawk. Before we do so, Ms. Barker-Harrell.
I asked Mr. Justice to bring up the map that was passed on Legislative Act 2612. That map has absolutely no highways on it.
Very good. Thank
But
you.
the point is that we're not changing legislation because there's no highway on these maps.
Thank you for that clarification. Before we proceed to a vote on a clarification, reaffirm that old Highway 20 was the council's intent. Certainly, we're not changing a map.
And you're not changing the legislation.
Referring consistent with the materials in front of us, old Highway 20. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Roll call.
Mr. Chair, what was it? Are we?
Yes, we're going to do roll call. Yes, is to clarify. May I speak?
And just for clarification, a yes vote is, it is along Old Highway 20, is that correct?
Right, consistent with the materials in front of us.
Yes. So the materials that we have, if we vote yes, these are the materials that we use.
Certainly.
Okay.
Very good.
Jody Fishinghawk?
Yes.
Meredith Fraley?
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright?
Yes.
Don Garvin?
Yes.
Frankie Hargis?
Yes.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.?
Yes.
Hannah Glory Jordan?
Yes.
Lee Keener?
No.
Dick Lake?
Yes.
Curtis Snell?
Yes.
David Thornton?
Yes.
David Walkenstein?
Yes.
Kara Cowan Watts?
No.
Bill Englund?
No.
Jack Baker?
No.
Joe Berg?
Yes.
Julia Coates?
No.
We have 12 yes and 5 no.
Shelley.
And I just want to make sure, and this packet that we have in front of us is what goes to the election.
That is what the Election Commission has, and they had a question with respect to District 9 and 10, and we provided that clarification for their materials. For the remaining, yeah, Councilor.
That is different than the motion. This is the first time
I
we're seeing this
I just
map.
clarified, Counselor, what the speaker said, which was that our motion was with
To see the
respect.
map, we did not
No,
have
our
as a body.
Counselor, our vote was to clarify, to confirm that it's old Highway 20. Nothing more, nothing less.
So we have not legislated the map set that's put in front of us.
My understanding is that this map set has been relied on by the Election Commission. When they focus on Districts 9 and 10, they have a question. And that question required some clarification. That clarification has been provided. The Election Commission is here. I see heads nodding, and that indicates they're satisfied with the clarification.
If you're going to send the map set as part of the legislative record, then I would like Mr. Justice on record to say that that map set in front of us matches the original map set that created the map that was passed as a body.
Counselor, we've taken, we have provided the clarification we were going to provide. This material is what the Election Commission has developed. Based on the legislative act. They had one item that needed clarification. This body just provided it in overwhelming fashion. For the remainder of the reports, because we are running late, I would ask you to just rise and appear for questions. My apologies. If there's something that you just need to tell us, we'll certainly do that. Ms. Webston from the Tax Commission.
Afternoon. I believe you do have my report, and I would try to address any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ms. Webston? Well done. Ms. Hamby. Any questions for Ms. Hamby? Councilor Karen Watts.
Thank you. Will there be a reception in Washington DC next week that we're involved with, like the 5 tribes or anything else? One of our constituents from DC had asked if they had heard we were.
I would have to look at the agenda again. I think there was something at the Indian Museum, I believe, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
If we're part of something, would you send it over to Gail so that we can all have it, or so that we're attending when you go, because we've gotten no notice of anything.
Okay.
So.
The other update that I had a request on it was actually referring to the Arkansas Riverbed settlement. I looked back on some old documents. Keep in mind that those go back to 2004, 2007. But we have the nation's portion of that settlement was $20 million. A portion of that was for attorney fees, and then there was a portion that was withheld for the, there was a UKB dispute within that. I have received a list of properties that have been purchased through that. There's some issues with that I'm working out with the program and finance, and then I will get with the Attorney General prior to releasing that information that was requested by the council. 2 other things very quickly. We met with the Veterans Administration today, and we'll be sending out a letter of intent. We are next on their list to start an agreement with the VA. That's something that's personally to me a key issue. It's dear to my heart. But anyway, we'll be doing a letter of intent, and we are next on their agenda after the Choctaws. I also have a handout for you that I will leave with some of the issues that are ongoing with contract support costs.
Thank you, Ms. Amy. I think Councilor Crown Watts actually had additional questions.
Yeah, I had one more question. I figured out on the land buyback program that I was trying to ask about to you and Ginger, that it is under the Cobell lawsuit, and there was an article in the Indian Country Today actually by one of our citizens. Are we as a nation going to receive some of this money, and if so, how will it be spent, or has it already been spent on land buyback consolidation?
That's a different question, yes. So let me clarify, are you still wanting the information on the land that's
There's
purchased with the?
Arkansas, there's Arkansas, but I wanted to know if there was a specific question I had for somebody, and I didn't know how to answer them. Obviously, I didn't know exactly what they were talking about, but now I know, and that's how will the Cherokee Nation be participating in that land buyback?
Ms. Hanby, do you need some time to address her question and get back to her offline?
I'm just clarifying,
Very
make
good.
sure that.
Okay.
So it is 2 different requests,
Yes.
Cobell and Arkansas Riverbed.
Yes.
And we will work with the AG's office to provide that to you.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Ms. Hanby.
And these handouts I'll just leave with Shelley and
Appreciate that. Thank you. Gaming Commission.
Good afternoon.
Any questions for the?
Obviously, I'm not Jamie.
Jamie. Noted.
I'm a special projects officer standing in for Jamie. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for the Gaming Commission? We don't have any. Well, Madam Speaker.
Yes, what's your name for the record?
I'm sorry, Rhonda Trumbla.
Very good. Rhonda, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Justice, you're back.
Back. Just a couple of numbers to update on the registrar report. They had 632 address changes and 22 deceased notices. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Justice? No questions, Mr. Justice. Thank you, sir. All right. Our next item of business is item number 1 under old business. Discussion, Cherokee Phoenix, Councilor Keener. Councilor Keener is not in the room.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Certainly, Councilor.
Thank you. I think if I recall correctly, this was around travel and the FOIA compliance and the component of the Cherokee Phoenix being able to receive it. So I know Brian Pollard is right here, and I think he has a brief update, and then we'll have to table for another month.
Very good. Mr. Pollard, go ahead.
The last meeting, you requested that we do an audit, an internal audit, which would be reviewing our compliance with the Independent Press Act for publishing the Valley Report on a quarterly basis. I've referred that request to the editorial board, and they're going to take it up at their next meeting. What I have done in the meantime is I've met with the speaker about getting the council travel reports. I have a meeting tomorrow with the administration to normalize a process with them to do the same. And I'm hoping within the next week or so that I will be able to publish those records from the first quarter of this fiscal year, and that will be the normal process from here forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor.
And I want to thank Brian. He's worked, went the extra mile to try to make this happen. And I appreciate that. I think you were going to try to get it on to your website too.
Yeah, as soon as we get the records from administration, then we're going to publish all of it on the website.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And so I'll make a motion to table this until next month?
Give me a motion table, have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Hagan, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, table for a month. All right, we now move on to item number 2 under old business. Councilor Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe you've had this legislation in front of you for the past month, and I would make a motion to approve as provided.
A motion, we have a second.
Second.
Second by Councilor Hagan, any discussion? Councilor Watts, do you have any other introductory remarks before we move on to the next speaker?
I don't know if there was an update from Attorney General Hembry, but I believe he was going to bring back some information, or maybe it was our counselor or attorney, County Martha Harold,
Okay.
that I'll wave to the former registrar chair here.
Very good. Councilor Baker.
Yes, I would just ask for a friendly amendment. It says that the list be provided on the first day of each month and about the first business day of each month.
First
I'll
business
accept.
day. Been accepted, second accepts.
It would be in both places.
Yes.
Madam Speaker.
Is the registrar here? The registrar, is she here?
I don't think so. She may be over, there's quite a few people over at the complex with
Maybe you can answer my question. Is this something that we're already doing?
I do believe that the two lists go back and forth and updated, but you're talking about the list that goes between the Election Commission and the Registrar's Office?
I thought we were already doing this.
I have seen the legislation. I don't have it in front of me, but I wonder.
And I guess
Let me go get Ms. Harold as well.
I think my question, and let me just continue and just throw the question out there. If we're already doing this, do we have to legislate each and every activity? It seems to me if that's already the policy that's being followed here at the nation, why does it have to be legislated? And because of that, because they're already getting the death notices, I don't see a reason to add legislation. So at this point in time, I don't feel like I can support it. It seems to me we're doing it. We do not have to legislate folks going to the bathroom. That's a function that's almost automatic. Well, when someone dies, I believe that the information is coming to the Election Commission. I don't think we need to legislate it. I don't think we need to add this into the law when they're already doing it. So I cannot support it at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Any further questions or comment? Councilor Watts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had asked our attorney to research this, write it up, put it together. I'm not hearing any of the same comments from the Attorney General. I know I brought up, I had questions for Registrar O'Leary. I don't know why she's not here. I have seen no policy, I guess, and I would assume our attorney would have researched this and found that out, that says that this is what's happening. And I've gotten feedback that it may be intermittent, so I don't have assurance. But I see this as something to legislate because it reflects or could impact our election process.
Very good. I noted that election commissioner in the back of her room nodded her head earlier when the issue was, does this
I
happen?
speak, we are getting from
Sorry, we want to make sure you're heard.
It is my understanding from the election office administrator that they are doing daily updates from their program to the registration office. And so there is daily contact going back and forth. That is my understanding on keeping things updated.
Are you satisfied that this is happening?
Yes.
Very good. Any further discussion?
First question.
I'm sorry, I skipped Councilor Walking's take. My apologies.
I talked to Ms. O'Leary and Mr. Godwin a few weeks ago about this legislation, and they informed me that they do this on a daily basis, that it is current, and there was no need for the legislation. And they're not here because they're working on the Cobell stuff right now, but, and I believe Mr. Henry was supposed to speak for them as well, but, so I can't support the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anything further? All right, we'll proceed to a vote on the motion to approve Mr. Count Watts' citizenship or membership act. Let's see, this is a act. We'll take a roll call vote.
Frankie Hargis,
No.
Chuck Costigan Jr.,
No.
Tanya Flora Jordan,
No.
Lee Keener,
Yes.
Joe Clay,
No.
Curtis Schnell,
No.
David Thornton,
No.
David Walkingstick, Kara Cowan Watts,
Yes.
Bill England,
Yes.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Joe Byrd,
No.
Julia Coates.
Yes.
What was that?
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk,
No.
Meredith Fraley,
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright. No. Don Garvin.
Yes.
Seven yes and 10 no.
Motion fails. Now move on to item 1 under new business. Mr. Burris is unavailable today. I'm going to withdraw this. We'll take it up when we get coordinated on that. Move on to new business item number 2. Madam Speaker, would you take this resolution with respect to Mr. Spears?
Yes, this is a resolution confirming the nomination of Jack L. Spears as a commissioner of the Cherokee Nation Environmental Protection Commission. Mr. Spears, I believe he's here. I see him in the back of the room. Here to answer questions, and I would put that in the form of a motion.
Motion second, Councilman Fishinghawk. Madam Speaker, you yield to Mr. Spears, certainly.
Yes, I do. How are you doing, sir? I would, before I yield, I've had a number of dealings with this individual because he serves on the TPWA board. He's an excellent individual for this position, and I wholeheartedly support him.
Now, Madam Speaker, do you need to disclose that he's not your cousin?
Oh, he's not my cousin. There we know that. But I would like to be kin to him. He's a very good individual.
Mr. Spears, welcome, and thank you for taking on this position.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any words to share with the committee before we proceed on action on your resolution?
Well, I would say this, I heard the mention of the problem with the Illinois River. I was one of the originators of STIR, which has saved the Illinois River. I'm very interested in the environmental impact because I run a resort on the river, so it's very, very important, anything that has to do with the environment.
Very good. Councilor Cowan Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Mr. Spears, how are you doing today?
Thank you.
Very good. Could you give me some background on your experience other than early involvement with STIR that would qualify you for the Environmental Protection Commission?
Well, I would rely very strongly on my STIR involvement. But I'm a 3-term counselor with the city of Tahlequah. We deal with a lot of environmental issues there. I have a very good friend, who was the former mayor of Telephone, who is very much involved in the environment, Ken Purdy. So I feel like that I have the interest as a businessman and as an environmentalist to take care of this.
Okay, and these questions are probably obvious to you, but I just want them for the record. Do you have any relationship with either Tyson, Northwest Arkansas Council, or City of Bentonville, or Walmart? Any
None
Walmart
whatsoever.
businesses?
None whatsoever.
If it came down, because I know that Talafall's water treatment plant could be impacted by the
Very
scenic
definitely.
rivers standard, how would you weigh in on that if you have your city council hat and you have your EPA or your environment EPC hat for the Cherokee Nation? If the Cherokee Nation, for example, wanted a more stringent water quality standard that would economically impact the wastewater treatment plant at Talafall, how would you handle that?
Well, I would be very definitely for anything that would help, the environment. I understand that the treatment plant is going to have some upgrades within the next probably 5 to 10 years, which is going to be reflected by TPWA. So we're aware that this is coming down the pike.
But if it came down to it, there was a conflict of interest, you would either disclose for the record or ask the Attorney General or maybe recuse yourself?
Yes, it would.
Okay. And so, how do you understand your role as an Environmental Protection Commissioner
Well,
for the Cherokee Nation?
I understand it in 2 areas. Number one, it needs to be run as a business. I'll be very loyal to the Cherokee Nation and any issue that came before me that had an effect on the Cherokee Nation.
Very good. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Spears.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Fulbright,
I would like to be added as sponsor.
add you certainly. And Counselor Fishing Hawk added as well. Mr. Spears, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
We'll add Counselor Byrd as well. All right, this is a resolution to approve Mr. Spears for the EPC. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Mr. Spears. All right. Item number 3, Counselor Fishing Hawk, would you take this one, Mr. Fletcher, for the EPC?
Yes, this is a nomination for Blake Fletcher as a Commissioner of the Cherokee Nation Environmental Protection Commission. He's from Adair County, and it's with great pride to make a nomination for him. Second.
Motion is second by Counselor Hargis. Mr. Fletcher is here. Come forward. Welcome, and Counselor yields to you, I'm sure, to make some comments.
Thank you for allowing me to address the Rules Committee today. And I think that if this situation goes through, it would be a very big privilege to serve on this committee and to, in any way I can, help further the cause of the Cherokee Nation.
Any questions for Mr. Fletcher, Counselor Campbell?
So I try to ask the same questions of each nominee, and it's nice to meet you. How are you doing today? Very good. Thank you for being here, Mr. Fletcher. You came highly endorsed by your peers and colleagues in the area. I thought that was very impressive. So could you tell me specifically about your experiences that qualify you for this position as Environmental Protection Commissioner for the Cherokee Nation?
I have had the privilege over the career that I've spent to reside in Adair County and live my adult life here in this area. Most of my nursery experiences have been broadened by being able to install and start nurseries in El Campo, Texas, Fort Gibson, Oklahoma, and Tarboro, North Carolina. And in each of those situations, I was involved in all of the production activities. The most important thing in the production of plant material is good water quality and maintaining that water quality throughout the life of the plant material. And also abiding by and going along with all of the regulatory rules and regulations of each state. So I've been able to have experience dealing with the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, the North Carolina Water Commission, and the Texas Water Resources Board. So I hope that will give me some credibility to the position that we're talking about. And then further, I've been involved in nutrient transport through plant material and the tie-up of in-soil colloidal activities, so that I can hopefully understand and help make recommendations in regard to water runoff and pollution.
Is that in regard to rain gardens or just specific research around certain plants?
Involves a broad area of both research and the individuality of certain plants.
Very good. Do you have any ties or relationships to Tyson, Northwest Arkansas Council, City of Bentonville, or Walmart? Family of businesses. Okay, very good. And I think one story that was relayed to me was specifically that without being forced by regulations, or else where you actually was an early adopter of ponds in order to capture nutrients coming off the nurseries before they went to run off back into the watershed. So that spoke, in my world, that spoke very highly to the choices you make in your professional career, and I appreciate that. So, is there anything else you need to disclose to us or anything this time?
I'm really looking forward to the opportunity, which was in this commission, and I'm at this point very excited about it.
Okay, well, I assume you know your role as an EPC, so thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Fletcher, for being here with us today.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Fulbright.
Yes. I really feel honored that you would take this position. You're highly qualified. I know that you're a great naturalist and you live your life that way. And I think you're a fine example that we all can follow. And I just want to say you've got my support. I know you'll do a tremendous job. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Burke.
Same, echoing what you just said, is one of the most outstanding citizens, and we're very honored that you would consider serving on one of the commissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the nominee? All right, we will, thank you, sir. We will proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Very good, congratulations. All right, Councilor Snell, would you take item number 4, the nomination of Mr. Erb to the Economic Development Trust Authority?
Yes. This is a resolution confirming the nomination of Johnny Earp as a board member of the Economic Development Trust Authority Board of Directors. I've known Johnny for years. He is a banker and a rodeo clown, and I think he would be a fine member on this development. Johnny, you want to?
Thank you. It's an honor and privilege to come in front of this board, and this is just one way I have an opportunity to give back to my native tribe that's done so much for me over my lifetime. So I appreciate that opportunity. Questions?
Any questions for the nominee?
I'll move for this approval.
I'll second. We have a second by Councilman, Councilor Fishing.
Oh, and it's a sponsor.
That is a sponsor, certainly.
Same here, Shelley.
I'd also like to be added.
Madam Speaker. Any further questions for the nominee? All right, we'll proceed to a vote then. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Congratulations. Madam Speaker, would you take the next one, item number 5?
Yes, this is a resolution confirming the nomination of Brian Hartley as a board member of the Economic Development Trust Authority Board of Directors, and Mr. Hartley is present today, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Second by Councilor Fishing, and Madam Speaker, I've known this man since we were both in kindergarten. He was economic developing on the playground in kindergarten, so he's,
What was you doing?
I was lawyering, slip and falls. But Mr. Hartley and his family are really synonymous with economic development in Veneta because of his involvement in Oklahoma State Bank, which is a Terra-certified bank, one of the few Terra-certified banks we have. So they're very prideful about being Cherokee at Oklahoma State Bank. Brian can tell you more, but he is very qualified for this position, and I'm glad he's made time to take it on. So, Mr. Hartley, you have some words to share with us.
I'm extremely excited and honored for this position, and I find it a great opportunity to help out in my backyard and get everything. Banking-wide, if you can help your neighbor, it helps, and I think this is a great possibility too.
Any questions for the nominee? All right, very good. You got off easy. Councilor Cam Watts is out of the room, so we may proceed to a vote.
She'll ask you at council.
Yeah, you may be asking council since she's out of the room, but we appreciate your willingness to serve, and we know you'll do well. All those in favor of the nominee say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Congratulations. And Councilor Fishing Hawk is added as a sponsor. Okay, all right. Item number 6, I am withdrawing, so we'll move on to item number 7. Item number 7 is a nomination of Mr. Qualls, board member of the Cherokee Nation Foundation. I'll take it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Here's a resolution confirming nomination of Leroy Qualls as a board member of the Cherokee Nation Foundation. I'll put that in form of a motion.
Madam Speaker, seconds. Mr. Qualls is here. You have some words to share with us?
Mr. Chair and council, I appreciate the vote of confidence, and I'll serve you to the best of my ability.
Very good. Any questions for the, Councilor Fulbright, did you have a question?
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Okay.
I just want to share with everyone that I've known Mr. Qualls from a very early age. He went to school at Belfont, and my mom and dad had a big role in his education. We've been very proud of his success, and he's been a role model for other people from the area. And I'm just happy that he will take this position and serve.
Thank you, ma'am.
And also on behalf.
Certainly. Councilor Garvin?
As one of the sponsors, I've known Mr. Qualls for quite some time, and I strongly recommend him. He works good with the young people. He's always cool under fire. I've watched him many years and never seen him make a misstep at all. I strongly recommend him on this committee. He'll do a good job. Thank you.
Councilor, anything further? Yes, Councilor.
Yes, I've known Mr. Qualls for quite a while, just not personally. But there's just one thing that I really did care about him, and that's when Vian played basketball against him while he was coaching. And we would have liked to have hired him for a coach, but he never would come our way. So I'm very much for Mr. Qualls, and I appreciate him very much for what he's done over the years. And I also like how he has brought his education forward and come up and be an administrator. And I commend you for that, Mr. Qualls. And so that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Thornton.
Thanks, sir.
Councilor Walking-Stick.
I've had the opportunity to be a student at Sequoia my freshman year when it wasn't the popular place to be. It wasn't school choice. And Mr. Qualls came in as a principal and athletic director, and the school did a 180, and it was a totally different atmosphere. And he also led our basketball team to the first state championship appearance. And he's really passionate for students, and especially kids that are at risk. He's really good with those students as well, and maximizing them. So, give him my support.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kamowatz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has it been vetted about the potential conflict of interest for you being on the Cherokee Nation Foundation Board if you're benefiting from their activities?
Well, my role, as I understand it, would be to serve Cherokee Nation members. And I've done that pretty much all my life through other schools and activities. I don't see the conflict.
Does CNF provide services to Sequoia? Or is the leadership of Sequoia High School?
I'm new enough to not know enough about that to answer your question.
I'm concerned about the conflict of interest between that your students are served by a number of programs. I don't remember if there's grants, but that's what I understood. So I'm probably going to abstain right now and then try to figure out between now and council meeting whether or not that's an issue.
Our students are served by BIE grants at this time and GT programs. I don't know anything about the foundation as far as serving in high school.
I've been given information, different information, so I'll have to find out, and for now, I'll just abstain. For the record, that's why.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Qualls. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Qualls, when you serve on the Cherokee Nation Foundation and issues that arise that Sequoia is getting some grant, you'd certainly listen to legal counsel that Cherokee Nation Foundation has to determine whether you should recuse yourself from a particular vote.
Absolutely.
You certainly would listen to your counsel at Sequoia to recuse yourself as warranted. You probably already listened to legal counsel on all sorts of things. So,
Absolutely.
So I think your reputation's solid in that respect. And from my perspective, and I'm on the advisory board, as is Councilor Burr, there's not a conflict of interest. Possibly there could arise some reason to recuse yourself, but that's true for any of the members that serve on any of these boards, and we understand that that can happen, and it's just part of the process. So from my perspective, I'm confident you'll be seated with no conflict, but I know you'll check those things out as they arise. Any further questions for the nominee, Madam Speaker?
Well, I just wanted to expose, he did coach at Hallbrook, and we were very proud of him. He also coached at Tahlequah, and we were extremely proud of him. This man is for the kids, and that's what we need on the Education Foundation. He'll do everything he can to push a kid forward, and that's what I've always loved about Leroy. He's very sincere, and he certainly has my vote in this matter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Councilor Fishing on.
You had my vote when I heard what you did for the at-risk kids. That's wonderful.
Did you point at him when you said that?
Not today, you
And we actually have a number of additional co-sponsors, and I'm sure I missed some, but Councilor Fishing Hawk, Councilor Garvin, Councilor Fulbright, you had asked a co-sponsor, I believe, and if I've missed anyone, and Councilor Snell. Very good. Councilor Lay, you added as a co-sponsor, you have a question? Added as a co-sponsor, very good. Okay, we'll now proceed to a vote on Mr. Qualls' nomination. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Same.
Mr. Qualls abstains. Thank you, sir. Congratulations. All right, we now move on to item number 8, and not apparent from the title, but Madam Speaker, this has to do with vehicle tags. Would you take this?
Yes, it's a legislative act amending LA 0101, Section 24A, and I'm going to ask Sharon to come up. I'm going to put it in the form of a motion.
Sorry.
And I'm going to ask Sharon to come up. I would like for Sharon to, think she can better explain it.
What this act does is it adds some additional years under the veteran fees for tags. Before it had been 1 to 4 years, and then 5 to 12 years, and then 13 and over. There was a big gap in there compared to just the regular tag. So what we done was we added the 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16. It gives a reduction of $10 up to $20 on each one of those tags. And we went down and dropped down to the veterans and foreign wars and done the exact same thing. Added the additional years on the vehicle age, and dropped the amount of the tags. They drop anywhere from $15 to $25.
are from $5 to $25 on the tax. So it's a reduction for our veterans, and it gives them a little more variety in there for the age of the vehicle. It's in the same comparison as just for a normal citizen to tag their vehicle. So they all run along the same lines.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Swepson. Madam Speaker, you still have the floor.
Yes, and we had asked Sharon to work on this with us, to take care of our veterans, because there seemed to be a gap there where they were paying an increased amount.
If their vehicle was over 5 years, or over that 12 years old, they were paying the same amount or $5 more than what a regular citizen was.
Yeah, I think we figured out it was $5 more, and out of respect for our veterans, we wanted to correct that.
And this has been through the commission, the tax commission. It's been approved by them. It's been out for the 30-day period for comment. There were no comments. So it should be ready to go with the council's approval.
Very good. Anything further, Councilor England?
I'd like to be added as
Certainly, Councilor. All right, anything further?
The only,
Add Councilor Thornton as a sponsor as well. Ms. Webster?
the only other thing I added was the commercial trucks. Somewhere or other that had gotten dropped out in some of the carrying forward the legislation. So it's just a correction to add that in there. It's been passed, but for whatever reason, it wasn't written in there, so we just made sure we put that in there also.
And we're adding Councilor Garvin as a sponsor. Councilor Fraley, did you have your hand raised as a sponsor? Okay, Councilor Fraley is a sponsor. Anything further? Councilor Lay is a sponsor, of course. All right. All right, this is, Madam Speaker, by acclamation.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. All right, we are. Councilor Fishing-Hawk, we are at item number 9.
I'd like to withdraw this one. Oh, table it.
Table, motion to table. Motion, we have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. It's tabled for a month. Item number 10 is an act relating to the sentencing of criminals, Cherokee Nation. This relates to the Travel Law and Order Act. Madam Speaker, would you introduce that?
Yes, this is an act related to the sentencing of criminals within the Cherokee Nation. I would put that in the form of a motion and then ask Attorney General Embry to come, or Ms. Hill, I'm sorry, Ms. Hill to explain to the council.
All right, we have a second by Councilor Fishing-Hawk.
Yes.
And Ms. Hill, go ahead.
This is going to be an update of the criminal code to increase penalties as permitted under the Tribal Law and Order Act that was passed in 2010. Honestly, this probably should have been done long ago. Some of the provisions, a lot of tribes have had a hard time implementing the Tribal Law and Order Act because it requires them to do a lot of things that the tribes may not be able to afford to do, like provide court-appointed counsel to defendants and things of that nature. These are things that Cherokee Nation has done for many years. And so I think we're ready to implement the Tribal Law and Order Act, and this will give us, what we had to do is change the statute to allow us to create longer sentences than were already authorized by the statute. So that's what this bill will do. I basically went through our criminal code, any place where the current penalty was not up to what Oklahoma required, I increased it to the maximum of what we were allowed to do. And in no cases did I create a penalty that was greater than what Oklahoma would impose for the same crime if it had happened on state land. So that was the methodology or the reasoning behind it. This has been through the Marshal Service, and they've looked through all the changes that we made and are in agreement with them.
Thank you. And Councilor, there's a lot here. I would be content even to take this over a couple of months, although I think Ms. Hill has summarized it nicely. So if there's further questions, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to taking another month with it. But are there any questions for Ms. Hill?
There are a few places I noticed in your copy where it looks like a link somehow got posted into the statute, and I need to clean that up, and I'll do so. I didn't realize that it happened somewhere along the line. But other than that, if there are any questions about specific crimes, or if you have questions about them, I'd be happy to address those now or next month.
If nobody has questions. Any questions for Ms. Hill? All right. Madam Speaker?
Yeah, I believe we have enough information on this to move it forward to full council this time. So I would go ahead and encourage my fellow councilors to vote on number 10, to vote in its favor, to move it on to full council.
It really is tremendously important, and it's going to be sort of a watershed moment, I think, because there are a lot of tribes that haven't had the opportunity to do this, and the statute has really been underutilized by tribes for a lot of reasons. So this will be great for Cherokee Nation to show that tribes are taking advantage of what the federal government has provided in this law.
Ms. Barker Harold?
The Tribal Law and Order Act changed the Indian Civil Rights Act that was originally written and allows for tribes to enhance their punishments. This gives the opportunity for when crimes are committed within our jurisdiction. A lot of times the U.S. Attorney's offices would find those cases and then an offender goes unaccounted. And so this is really important. And this is going to be very helpful for us to have this, and we can put it in the grant application for the combined tribal assistance solicitation that we're submitting in a couple of weeks. So it would be great to be able to say that.
And not to belabor it, but the other really important provision of this is one of the issues is how do you pay for someone to be in prison for 3 years once you sentence them? And this law, also there's a pilot project that will allow transfer of tribal prisoners to the Bureau of Prisons so that the federal government can pay for the incarceration, and that's provided for in the statute as well to participate in that.
Any further questions for Councilor Keener, then Councilor Lay?
Well, I've noticed that you did say you worked with the Marshal Service and Director Shannon Buell on this.
Right.
And I talked with him about this, and thank you for all your work on this. And is there a motion to approve?
There is.
Okay.
One more statement, I'm sorry.
I'd vote to support this.
The other thing I forgot to mention, and I should mention, is there's this new provision, a brand new section on stalking that makes stalking a crime for the first time. The One Fire Task Force and all of our domestic violence people were very involved in putting that together as part of their grant application. I did not want to fail to acknowledge their work on that.
Madam Speaker, would you make a friendly amendment to change this to the Cherokee Nation Law and Order Act?
Yes, I would.
Or would you accept that?
Yes, I would accept that.
From Councilor Hargis, I think, is making that friendly, and Councilor Pigeon Hawk accepts.
Have to be added as sponsor.
Councilor Garvin. Added as sponsor, Councilor Keener, Thornton, England, and Count Watts, and Councilor Fraley, Fishing Hawk. Councilor Hargis, Councilor Snell's on there, naturally. All right, very good. Well, we moved more efficient than I thought. That's good. By acclamation, Madam Speaker?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Councilors, item number 11 is merely discussion. There are some materials in your packet, and I believe Ms. Hill is going to make a brief presentation on the Violence Against Women Act. It is pure coincidence that this morning the House of Representatives, as the Attorney General mentioned earlier, approved the Senate version, which means it goes to the President's desk for enactment. At the time we put this on here, it was not so clear. The leadership of the House of Representatives had a watered-down version that absolutely gutted the tribal provisions, but they yielded, I think, to popular sentiment that this is the right thing to do. The people that didn't yield were every one of our members of Congress except for Congressman Cole. He was the only one that stood up and said, yes, we want these tribal provisions. But I'd like the committee to understand a little bit more about the Violence Against Women Act now that it's headed to the President's desk and what it means for our people. So could you give us just a brief rundown?
Sure. This is tremendously good news for all of the Indian tribes that this has moved forward with the tribal provisions intact, because it was really a point of contention. For the first time in a very long time, an Indian tribe will be able to exercise criminal jurisdiction over a non-Indian who commits a crime on their Indian country against one of their citizens. And I've heard a lot of Congress people talk about being concerned that this would create problems for the rights of offenders. And I find that when you consider the rights that have been violated when a crime is committed against a woman in Indian country, it's hard for me to be overly sympathetic sometimes to the rights of the offenders. But I am content that this law does protect the rights of offenders. They're going to have a right to a jury trial. They're going to have a right to access habeas corpus to request review of their sentence. Their rights are protected under tribal law and under federal law under this statute. And I think a lot of times our congressmen maybe fail to think about the rights of the women. When their rights are violated, who do they turn to? If the federal government won't prosecute those crimes, and then they can't turn to the tribe to do it, who do they go to?
Sarah, if I could just interrupt briefly. Senator Coburn is the only member of our delegation that I heard explain his opposition.
Right.
And his opposition was in the nature of, and this isn't a quote, but that when you go to Indian country, it's a region of no constitutional protections. I didn't hear why Congressman Langford voted against it. I didn't hear why Congressman Lucas voted against it. Bridenstine of Tulsa, I don't know why he voted against it. Congressman Markwayne Mullin, a Cherokee, I don't know why he voted against it. But Senator Coburn says there's no constitutional rights in Indian country. That's just not right.
No, that's just not right. And there's a specific Supreme Court case that was decided in 2004, the Lara decision, where the Supreme Court specifically said Congress has the ability to change criminal jurisdiction in Indian country to give tribes this type of authority. So I don't think that there's any real legitimate legal issue here. I think that he's completely wrong on the law on that. I think it is completely constitutional. And I think it won't take very long for it to be enacted and for the courts to hear it and those types of challenges to go by the wayside.
Very good. And please continue.
And that was the most important part, I think, for tribes, is that so many of these crimes, as all of you I'm sure are aware, domestic violence crimes, stalking crimes, take up a big portion of any district court's docket dealing with those types of issues. And when they go unprosecuted, it has effects on families, communities, it affects everyone, not just the person who has had the crime perpetrated against them. It really is a crime against the entirety of the nation, the Cherokee Nation, when these crimes occur. And this gives tribes the opportunity to go in and hold people accountable to that, even if they're not tribal citizens. If you come on to Cherokee Nation and you abuse a Cherokee woman, you're going to be held accountable for that, whether you're an Indian or a non-Indian. And that's what this law will provide for, and I think that's tremendously important.
Very good. And there are a lot of grants that were at stake had this not been reauthorized.
Right.
I assume Cherokee Nation avails itself of those grants when we can.
Right. The Attorney General's office has, I think, a $400,000 or plus Violence Against Women Act grant. And through that grant, they have provided a lot of services to women, and not just Cherokee women, but non-Cherokee women in this community, who anywhere in the 14-county area who need help, including things like legal fees for civil representation, transitional housing, and those things are not commonly available to women through some of the other programs that exist. So it's really important, and with this grant reauthorized, it gives Cherokee Nation opportunity to help non-Indian and Indian women in the community, because it affects everybody in the community.
Very good. Well, appreciate your presentations. Any questions for Ms. Hill?
Good report.
Madam Speaker.
I just want to say how much I appreciate both Ms. Hill and our own council attorney, who has just worked tirelessly on this particular issue. I want to thank both of you all, because I know it's been a lot of late night work. It's just much appreciated.
Thank you. And I do want to share with the council that I'm a former victim of domestic violence and went through a 6-year siege in the 1970s. This issue is very close to my heart and to my 2 eldest daughters. And the Tribal Law and Order Act creates a lot of constitutional provisions to make sure that those attacks by some that don't understand the constitutional provisions that are there. And so for this to apply and us to have jurisdiction over non-native offenders gives more accountability to those offenders and more safety to victims. So it is very close to my heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
And certainly we appreciate the Marshal Service and the Task Force on Domestic Violence and Joni Greenhall. There are a lot of people whose work go into these things.
Thank you. I see the Marshal there. Thank you, Marshal. All right. No further questions. We'll move on. Thank you. All right. Item number 12, amendment to the Cherokee Nation Election Code regarding absentee ballots. Mr. Keener.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I handed out the wording on that. Diana's helped me on that. So we expect it to change, but on the second page, at the top, it will read under section 4, absentee ballots other than their own shall not be mailed to either elected officials or anyone living in their domicile, candidates or tribal state notaries at their physical address, associated P.O. box or places of business. The only exception is those ballots sent on behalf of servicemen and women who are unable to vote in person. I'd like to move that forward.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes, in the form of a motion.
Right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Con Watts. Any discussion? Councilor Thornton.
I'll have to come out against this. I've got relatives that live with me, and that's my son, my grandson, both of them vote. They may want to vote absentee, and that's the way it's going to be for me.
Well, this does not exclude them. That kind of, it may appear that way, but it's other than...
No, it appears that way.
Sorry.
Don't.
I think he's yielded to you, Councilor. Go ahead and respond.
Well, I guess the intent was to say that anyone living in your domicile can receive an absentee ballot. So we might need to adjust the wording on that. But the intent was not to get 100 absentee ballots mailed to the candidate.
Councilor Keener, would you yield the question for me?
Yes.
Is there a problem with, in our Cherokee Nation, with absentee ballots being received at elected officials' addresses?
Well, from what people have told me, there is, but I don't know firsthand.
And Councilor, with all due respect, from what people told you, you don't know firsthand, we're about to restrict the ability of Cherokee citizens to exercise their right to vote. I feel so passionately about this, I jumped in the front of the line because I just think I think it's a solution in search of a problem. It also occurred to me that when I was a student in school, college, when my father was on the council, I didn't live at 339 North 8th. I lived in Norman, Oklahoma, but I got my ballot sent there. He was an elected official. There was a problem with that, but under this act, wouldn't it have been prohibited? Wouldn't I have violated the law?
Yes.
I wasn't living, it says living at their domicile. It doesn't say anything about the voter's domicile, it says their domicile. I mean, I think this is an invitation for challenge after challenge, for endless litigation, for an election commission that's already burdened with dealing with the existing code. And I just am concerned about this. I know you care deeply about not having fraud in our elections. I know it's an important issue for you. I just don't think this attacks a problem that exists. So I can't support this. Madam Speaker.
I too am going to be unable to support it. From time to time, I've had my adult children, while they were off at college or off at a temporary job, not be living in my home, but they intended to return there. That had been their home their entire life, and they wanted to vote from there. I just cannot support this in any form that, even if we made changes to it. I agree with the chairperson. It seems like you're trying to find a problem. We've not had this problem. If we had had this problem, I would suppose it would come up in some other elections. It's not come up in other elections. We're 2 days, 3 days away from filing, and we're still giving them rules to implement. Folks, this has got to stop somewhere, and it needs to stop with this particular act. So I cannot support it.
Any further questions or comments? Councilor Gallowitz.
Thank you. Actually, I've run the data from the absentee ballot request and found that there were candidates and seated officials who had received a number of ballots at their various businesses and P.O. boxes that they had set up during the campaign. And it came to my attention that maybe even one ballot was requested without the knowledge of an individual who was deployed in the military service, didn't know they had a ballot, and maybe even having voted as well, that ballot, that individual didn't even know they had received. So yes, I think there's a problem, and the data is there to support it.
It sounds to me like the data is there that there's evidence of one possible incident of voter fraud in the largest Indian nation in the United States of 300,000 citizens.
Yeah.
If that surely doesn't warrant the restriction the one piece of fraud that's not proven surely doesn't warrant the restriction on the other 299,999 Cherokees. It just doesn't.
Call for a question.
This is an act, we'll take a roll call.
Don Garvin,
Yes.
Frankie Hargis,
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
No.
Donna Gloria Jordan.
No.
Lee Keener,
Yes.
Dick Lay,
Nope.
Curtis Snell,
Nope.
David Thornton,
No.
David Walkingstick.
No.
Karen Calhoun Watts,
Yes.
Bill Enklin,
Yes.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Joe Byrd,
No.
Julia Coates,
Yes.
She's going to give it a thumbs up.
Well, now, wait a minute, she has to have both audio, a point of clarification. She has to have both audio and video to vote. And we have no audio. A thumbs up don't count.
We'll
here,
give her
folks.
an opportunity to call. When we will come back to her, can you continue with the roll call?
Jody Fishinghawk, Meredith Fraley,
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright. And do we have Julia back?
We're having technical difficulties. Let the minutes reflect that Councilor Coates gave a thumbs up. And that she can record a vote at full council. Well, no, she can't record a vote at full council. We'll reflect the minutes that she's attempted to indicate a thumbs up.
But still, a point of clarification, that will not become a regular basis for how we're going to vote.
It's not. We're just going to reflect what we all saw. It's not a recorded vote.
We have 6 yes, 10 no, and a thumbs up.
Yeah, we have six yes and 10 no, and the minutes will reflect the difference of the council. Do we have any announcements? Councilor Snell.
I would like to thank everyone for their good prayers and thoughts and notes and phone calls for my sick wife. She is doing much better today, and I just thank everybody.
Motion for adjourned by Councilor Byrd. Second by Councilor Walkstick. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Councilor Fisher says 15 minutes. Well, we did good today.